Sunday school teacher, I'm glad that you have joined us for our time of study and preparation. I'm Tim Smith with Sunday School University. Today we continue in our study of Acts. We are working on the lesson for Sunday, July the 7th. The title of this lesson is Accountable. We are in Acts chapter 4, the end of chapter 4 through the beginning of chapter 5. The point of the lesson is this, that God holds believers accountable for their motives in service. Our motives matter, and our motives are known by God. But also, our motives can become evident to the church. The book of Acts has summary statements as well as details of events of the early church. The summary statement before our passage stresses unity and mutual care that characterized the early church. That's in chapter 4, verses 32 through 35. Again, Luke gives us that summary statement of how the church cared for each other and how they grew together. This summary statement sets the stage for a specific example or examples of giving in action. While many believers showed their love by meeting the needs of the very poor, others apparently had less pure motives, and we're going to see that. In this study, we'll see that God sees the heart and holds believers accountable not just for their actions, but also their motives. So, here we go. Chapter 4, verse 36 through 37. Joseph, a Levite from Cyprus by birth, the one the apostles called Barnabas, which is translated son of encouragement, sold a field that he owned and brought the money and laid it at the apostles' feet. So here we have Exhibit A, Barnabas. Barnabas illustrates the generosity common in the early church. The apostles gave him the nickname Barnabas because he was the one that encouraged people in both word and deed. Says that he was a Levite. He came from the tribe of Levi. Now this is the family of Aaron from the Old Testament. These were the people who were selected to be the leaders and caretakers of the temple. It's also important to note that back in the Old Testament, those who were of the Levi tribe were not allowed to have possessions. Their possession was the temple. Take care of the temple, tabernacle. He's got land to sell. So over time, things had changed and the rules had been laxed, but he had possessions. Cyprus is significant because he is a Levite. He knows the Jewish ways. He knows he's a Jew. But also he is from Cyprus, and that's important because he had had more exposure to Gentiles than most Jews. So he has a foot in both worlds. This gift, in verse 37, oh my goodness, that encouraged the apostles. I mean, here's a guy who's got property, sells it, brings the money. No wonder they called him the one of encouragement. The amount is not mentioned, but it does imply that all the proceeds were given. The focus is on the generosity and the sincerity of Barnabas. Again, not the amount, but that he gave, and he gave totally, and he had pure motives. His sincere service and generosity sharply contrasts the deceptive and self-promoting behavior of the next two that are coming. And so that's where we pick up in chapter 5, verses 1 and 6. We've got Ananias. But a man named Ananias, with his wife Sapphira, sold a piece of property. However, he kept back part of the proceeds with his wife's knowledge and brought a portion of it and laid it at the apostles' feet. Ananias, Peter asked, why has Satan filled your heart to lie to the Holy Spirit and keep back a part of the proceeds of the land? Wasn't it yours while you possessed it? And after it was sold, wasn't it at your disposal? Why is it that you have planned this thing in your heart? You have not lied to the people, but to God. When he heard these words, Ananias dropped dead, and a great fear came on all who heard. The young men got up, wrapped his body, carried him out, and buried him. Ananias, Exhibit B. His name means God is gracious. It's a common name. We see that they sold a piece of property. That is not enough for us to know how large the property was or the value. Verse 2, he did what others had done. He brought the money to the apostles. This was not a private meeting where he's giving this in anonymously. No, he's wanting to get as much attention as possible. It is a public gathering. And it's something that he had told them he was going to do. He evidently had told them, I've got this piece of property, I'm going to sell it, and I'm going to bring you all the money. But he kept part of the money from the sale. And so he was stealing from God. His wife knew about it. Okay. Verse 3, Ananias was probably expecting praise for his generosity. Peter pointed out the spiritual aspects of this attempted deception and thievery. He basically compares Ananias to Judas. Ananias did not take the presence of the Holy Spirit in the church seriously. He thought he could hide it. Similar to the sin of Achan in the Old Testament. Peter's knowledge of the deception also confirmed that the Holy Spirit of God sees the heart of the indwelled believers. God knows the stuff. Peter continued his rebuke of Ananias by pointing out that all of this was unnecessary. You could have just kept your land. Or you could have said, hey, I'm going to give you just a little bit of what I got and we're going to take the rest and live on it. You could have done that. But saying, oh, I've sold this piece of property, I'm bringing you all. No, you've lied. Verse 5, God's judgment on Ananias was swift. Now, in verse 6, the speed of Ananias' burial was normally done in cases of suicides or criminals. It says in verse 6 that they came in, young men, they came in and wrapped his body. Now, that's not let's take some time and wrap the body like we normally do for the regular funeral. No, they just gathered his stuff up and stuck him in the ground. There is no mention of family. There is no mention of ceremony. There is no mention of mourning. It's just over. God saw his heart, exposed his secrets, and judged him for his sins. Now we got Sapphira. About 3 hours later, his wife came in. Where was she? I humorously like to think she was at the beauty parlor. Not knowing what had happened, tell me, Peter asked, did you sell the land for this price? Yes, she said, for that price. Then Peter said to her, why do you agree to test the Spirit of the Lord? Look, the feet of those who have buried your husband are at the door, and they will carry you out. Instantly she dropped dead at his feet. When the young men came in, they found her, carried her off, buried her beside her husband. Then great fear came on the whole church and all who heard these things. It's important to note here that I was just following orders. It is not an excuse. She didn't sign the documents, but she knew about it. And so she couldn't say, well, the reason I did this bad thing is because I didn't have a choice and I was just doing what I was told. No, she knew. Sapphira, the wife of Ananias, came in, and at the point she did not know what had happened to her husband. She didn't know he's dead. She was 3 hours later. She knew about the plan to keep the proceeds. She was guilty. She too doubted the reality of the Holy Spirit. Peter said that God's judgment would be just as swift and severe for her as it was for her husband. Just as Ananias had lied to the Holy Spirit, Sapphira has lied and tested the Holy Spirit. Those that had buried her husband are going to come in and carry you out and put you in the ground. God's judgment was immediate. Sapphira dropped dead just like her husband in verse 10. Despite the couple's apparent desire to be known for their generosity, in the end, they were revealed as liars and deceivers and an example not to follow. Their name was not, oh, let's be like Ananias and Sapphira and be generous. No, it's, hey, let's not be like Ananias and Sapphira and lie to God, because He knows. Summary points. Believers can encourage others by meeting the needs of others. We encourage others by meeting the needs of others. That's what Barnabas did. Number two, believers must carefully examine our motives when giving. Are you giving to get attention? Or are you giving to be obedient because God's told you to? Number three, believers must guard against following others' poor examples. Don't be like Ananias and Sapphira. I've got some questions in there to help with the beginning of the lesson and then the challenge. What results might we have if we give sacrificially to meet the needs of others? What's going to happen in that? And do we have a sense of joy when we give, or is our giving more of a duty or something to be checked off? How can we escape being a cheerless giver? How can we be more of a faithful giver? Well, the title of this lesson is Accountable. The point of the lesson is this, that God holds believers accountable for their motives in service. Well, I'll be praying for you as you teach this coming Sunday. God bless you.